Hello everyone. We had a massive influx just at the beginning, so you've all changed my talk a little bit. So we're going to do this on the fly, but probably a lot of you don't have too much background in Zen, so I'll try to give you a little bit of background. For those of you who come every week, I'll try to give you some meat to chew on. So today the heat wave broke, but the last few days were very hot. And I bet you many of you in this room were kind of miserable. It was hot, energy was difficult to muster. We don't have a lot of air conditioning around here, so you're sleeping in a hot room, and maybe a lot of you won't admit it, but you were probably a bit crabby. If you're living with people, you were crabby with the people you're living with. Happened to be the first, I guess it was Monday, my wife was especially miserable with the heat, and I was kind of neutral. So she couldn't quite understand why I wasn't joining her in her misery until the next day, when it finally hit me and I was miserable enough, so I got to join her in her misery. But wait till August, when it's been foggy for about a week and a half, and then we're desperate for the heat. So the weather is kind of a perfect example of our human suffering, because it's never quite right. There's always a little different that will make it just right. So if it's too hot, we want it cooler, but if it's cooler, we want it hotter. If we need rain, but we have a plan to do something outside, then we're miserable if it rains, but we know we need the rain, so we're kind of conflicted about it. And our minds and our feelings about things kind of drag us around. And we're kind of stuck dealing with I want to say the constructs of our mind. Heat is just heat. Cold is just cold. Our like and dislike is overlaid on it. Let's see if I could find it. There's a nice koan about this. Give me 1 second. I didn't think I'd read it, but of course I'm not going to find it. Anyway, this idea of hot and cold are a perfect explanation of what our minds do. Basic Buddhism says we suffer, and we suffer because either we don't have what we want, or we have what we want and we're afraid to lose it. So we're always at odds and fighting with our world. And where we get stuck is that we're lost in our own creation, and we believe the story that we tell ourselves. And that story controls our experience. And the Buddha taught that you can get out from behind that problem. There's a 1,200-page sutra called the Avatamsaka Sutra that we reduced to about 2 sentences. And basically it says, if you want to understand the way of the Buddha, you need to understand that everything is created by mind alone. The heat wasn't created by our minds, but our reaction and our response to the heat was our own creation. Pain is pain. Suffering arises out of our relationship to the pain. We have to deal with the pain. If it's too hot, we have to slow down. But if you look at your own mind, you get to see the misery that we create from our own thinking and feeling. So if you go away from this talk with nothing but this, leave with the recognition that your mind and heart, your feelings and your thoughts are creating the reality that you're struggling with. They're adding commentary to what is. So the heat is the heat. The misery around the heat is the commentary that we add onto it. And as much as we get lost into that commentary, we miss the direct experience of our own life. And from the Zen perspective, if we can investigate into our own minds and hearts, begin to see how our mind and how our heart operates, we can begin to find some freedom from the commentary that we make. So for the first, about 45 minutes tonight, we sat meditation. Zen literally translates as meditation. It comes from the Sanskrit. It goes to China where it's called Chan, and then it goes to Japan where it's called Zen. We're a Korean lineage, and actually in Korea they call it Sun, but it all means meditation. That basic practice that we joined in together tonight, slowly breathing in, slowly breathing out, doing your breath from your diaphragm, from your lower abdomen. Western style, we call it diaphragmatic breathing. Anybody who sings or probably does any long distance athletics, you train yourself to breathe from your lower abdomen. So in Zen practice, we start with the breath, just that simple focus on the breath. So when you breathe in, you breathe down into your lower abdomen, your diaphragm pushes down and goes out. So if you watch my hands, you'll see on the inhalation, the belly rises, and on the exhalation, it falls. And the very, very basic but profound meditation instruction is watch your breath. Slow your breath down. Back in the 1970s, when they were doing research on relaxation, they found that if you breathe at around 5 breaths a minute, your body starts to move into a state of relaxation. So when Paul gave us meditation instruction tonight, he just talked about watching the breath. And that is the primary practice. I would add, slow your breathing down a little bit. It's not a breathing exercise. You're not trying to get some kind of breath. But by slowing your breath and focusing inwardly on your breath, your body will calm, your mind will get a little calmer, and things will start to become more apparent. So in the basic meditation instruction, you just focus on the breath, slowly breathing in, slowly breathing out. And then we wonder, what am I? Or maybe you could say, what is this thing that we call I? We walk around all the time, I this, I that. We're naming ourselves. We're talking about this thing of I. But in reality, we don't even know what I is. I is a construct. I is made up of our past experiences. Starting from when we're infants, we build this sense of I, and it grows out of the conditions of our lives. Depending on the socioeconomic situation you grow up in, the stability of your family, the state of the society around you, all the different prejudices and ideas that the society have, they all come together to create this sense of I. And what gets lost is something authentic and real behind it. I know when I was growing up, what led me to practice, to Zen, was a feeling in my teenage years. I'd look around and everybody, all the adults around me seemed crazy. especially the men. Now, I'm sure I had a biased view and I didn't really see them that clearly. I didn't understand the struggles and the difficulties they were all having. But they all seemed inauthentic and unreal. They were all, in a sense, it seemed to me, everybody was involved in this game of presentation. And there didn't seem to be a connection to something real underneath. So it became a passion of mine. I remember one time when I was about 15, I was at a party. And this is the thing that probably lots of teenagers said. Maybe some of you said it. It was like, well, I just want to know who I am. I know how I present. I know what I'm told I'm supposed to be. But I want to know what I am. And I suppose most people give that up and they kind of move into the world of society, and they take on the responsibilities and they just go along. But that wasn't the path for me. I couldn't do that. So I've spent my life really with that question, what am I? And it's not a question that you specifically answer. It's not I am this or I am that. But it's like in this moment, when you shake out of the artificiality, directly experiencing the moment. The only way to become real is to fully express and connect with the moment around us. Sometimes we say that the only time we're truly alive is right now. You hear the sound. These words that you're hearing are entering your consciousness and you're working with them. In that moment, you're alive. But if you start thinking about that heat wave a couple of days ago, or the fog that's going to come in August, you're leaving this moment, and you're in the realm of dream and memory. The Buddha said that life is like a flash of lightning. Right now. Can we be present? Can we be available? Can we be alive for this moment? Things present themselves to us, and can we actually meet that moment? So this very simple practice of slowly breathing in, slowly breathing out, and asking this question, what am I? What is this? Then in meditation we begin to watch. We sat here tonight, between sitting and walking, it was about 45 minutes. And I'm sure for every one of us, all sorts of thoughts and feelings were running past us. And in meditation practice, we train ourselves to observe it, to watch it, not to judge it, not to make it be any particular thing, but just to begin to understand what it is that makes up this thing of I, so that we can open it. It's as if I is like a tightly woven tapestry, and nothing gets through. It like blocks everything. And our meditation practice is a little bit like pulling at it in all directions, so the weave gets looser. The I isn't so tight, and things can move, air can come in and go out, rather than being blocked. So we're trying to open and allow our authenticity to come out and everyday life experience to come in. I want to read you a poem. This poem is by our founding teacher, Zen Master Bon Soeng. It's the guy who's on that wall there. And it's called Original Face. Your true self is always shining and free. Human beings make something and enter the ocean of suffering. Only without thinking can you return to your true self. The high mountain is always blue, white clouds coming, going. Your true self is always shining and free. You're already here. You don't have to become something new. You don't have to be something that satisfies what you think is the image of what you're supposed to be. Your true self is always here. It's just that we block it. And it gets blocked behind our fears, behind our strong desires, our aversions, our anger, the conditioning that has been with us from the day we were born, probably even before that happened. And it just keeps growing. In our consciousness, it kind of works on a kind of confirmation bias. It's like things build on themselves, but if you already believe something, you start to see it all around you. So, and every time you see it, it's like another brick in the wall. And the concept of I gets tighter and tighter, stronger and stronger. From the point of view of psychology, you can almost say that the tighter and the more narrow your sense of self is, the more suffering you have. The more spontaneity, the more openness, the more flexibility you have, the more mental health you have, the healthier you are, because you move, you're not brittle. Too often our sense of self and I gets so tight and brittle that we get knocked over so easily. And we're always in battle that way. But if we're open, if we're flexible, if we're not so attached to outcome, we're freer. And there's more room for our natural organic self to just express itself. So when we're sitting in meditation, we're watching our conditioning. We're learning about how we block our own authenticity and our own authentic nature. So he says, human beings make something and enter the ocean of suffering. We want, we grasp for things, we attach to things, we check ourselves, we're always second guessing and doubting ourselves. And in that self-doubt and that we kind of hold ourselves tightly, and fear comes in and we're afraid to act. So this very natural way of protecting ourselves ends up becoming a prison. And this very simple practice of meditation offers us a way to look into that and, in a sense, bring our energy back in and just observe as best we can without judgment, without blame, without criticism, without adding anything extra, just seeing. So these days, mindfulness is a practice that people hear about a lot. And mindfulness is kind of very basic to Buddhism. It's not all of Buddhism, but it's basic to it. And in a mindfulness practice, mindfulness means paying attention on purpose. So we begin to observe. Like right now, I can feel the air from that ceiling fan blowing across my face. I can feel that breeze. For the last 15 minutes, I didn't feel the breeze. But we can bring our attention back and notice the sensation. We can notice the thought. We can notice the feeling. We can notice the anger. We can notice the pushing away, the pulling toward. And we can observe the results of our behaviors. If there's one thing that becomes really important in any kind of practice, is learning from our experience. So often we ignore the outcome and we just try the same thing over and over again, hoping we'll get a different result. But in practice, we just watch. What just happened? I did that. Now what happened? How did it work out? What do I learn from that moment? In psychological testing, there's this concept called a projective test. And basically, it's a test that you're asked to do something or respond to something or interpret something, and then it shows something about your own psychology. Well, in fact, everything we do is a projective test. If we watch, every action, every reaction, every moment offers us a window into our own experience. And again, the importance of the Buddhist teaching is that it's not just theoretical. You don't learn these lessons. You practice. You actually put yourself through something and you discover for yourself. So he says, only without thinking can you return to your true self. Without thinking doesn't mean no thoughts go in your mind. Without thinking means you're not attached. Thinking comes and goes, feeling comes and goes, and you watch it. You're aware of it, you're not denying it, but you're not holding on to it. If you think about how much we clamp down on things to try to make life work the way we want them to work. In our practice, we can begin to see it, and we can begin to watch the ways we can open up and let go. So this true self that's always shining and free, it's always here. Working with people, it's become really clear to me with just my own experience and working with others, our authenticity never disappears. It's never far away, but it's hiding behind a facade that we use to protect ourselves. A facade that we use to be accepted, to make things work the way we hope they'll work. But just behind that is something that he says is always shining and free. We see it in other people. We actually look for it in other people. We respond to it. But usually we're afraid to show it ourselves. So in our practice, we're opening the door up to allow more of that authentic nature to be expressed. And he ends the poem, the high mountain is always blue, white clouds coming and going. Mountains being blue is kind of an image that permeates Asian poetry. I walk very often in Mountain View Cemetery, which is up near Piedmont Avenue. And when you get to the top, or close to the top, you look out over the bay and you're looking out over San Francisco. And it's always blue. Just in the last couple of days when there was no fog, it was so clear that it had a little bit less of a blue tint. But generally speaking, if you look at things in the distance, there's a blue tint. Like a Georgia O'Keeffe painting, this blue. And week after week, it's the same way. So the high mountain is always blue. Blue is our perception. Just as it is the point. White clouds coming and going. If you know mountains, there's always a relationship between clouds and the mountain. I was just teaching down in Mexico a couple of weeks ago, and I've been going there for about 10, 11 years. And it's a city in Mexico that has, just on the outskirts of the city, is one of the tallest volcanoes that they have in Mexico. And it's this beautiful mountain, and I go there and I look for it every time I go there. And the only time you can really see it is in the morning. By noon, the clouds are covering the mountain. And by late afternoon, you can't see the mountain at all. But the mountain doesn't go anywhere. It's just that the clouds obscure it. It's the same thing with our true nature. It's always there. It's always shining and free. The clouds come and go, and the clouds block the view. But when the clouds part, it's right there. And our Zen practice offers us an avenue in. So whether it's Zen practice, any other kind of Buddhist practice, any practice you like, doesn't matter. Sitting and breathing and watching is not a Buddhist thing. It's just that it's something that the Buddha conjured up 2,500 years ago and offered to the world. But every religion has it. The secular observation of self is there. You don't need any kind of name for it. Just sit down. Spend 10 minutes, 15 minutes with yourself. Breathe in slowly. Breathe out and start to watch. What am I? What is this? And just use the question to open. Don't try to answer the question. In a Zen practice, you're always working with what we call great doubt. Not self-doubt, not self-consciousness, but a kind of opening question like the scientific method. What is this? You hear a sound in the distance and you don't know what it is. And you lean in a little bit and you listen a little more closely and you suspend enough of your thinking and feeling mind that you can actually listen. And then in a moment, it appears, you know what it is. But you don't figure it out. It kind of pops up. Allow your awareness to express itself rather than try to hold it and shape it. And this very simple practice that the Buddha offered, but it's all around us. Culturally, it's everywhere. Just slow down. Feel your body. Notice your sensations. Notice your thinking. Notice your feeling. And ask yourself, what is it that feels? How do I know? When I'm working with people, very often they'll say, I feel that I'm this or I'm that. And I'll ask them, how do you know that? And usually we're stumped. We just know. But actually we know because we've been building these ideas over decades. So in a moment you can stop and just wonder, listen, and look. Use your senses. Your senses will show you the way. Get too stuck in your conditioned mind and then you're evaluating what you're sensing. Return to your senses. Feel your body as you're sitting here right now. See if you can feel the breeze. Just in this moment, without judgment, without criticism. Just what is it? And then open.